The talk this morning, I'm calling It's Complicated. And the title of that talk came up after reading Jay Lochart's, a student of mine that lives over in Kalamazoo, after reading his email this morning. He sent an email. His question was, can you read that?
If we don't want someone to be in pain, but also can't give into their demands or the ego that has them in pain in the first place, how do we meet them in the valley?
Good question. Apparently, Jay, you have thought about that a lot. You wouldn't be able to put it that way. So I have a lot to say about that. And it is complicated. And so therefore, as practitioners, whether you consider yourself a Buddhist or just a student of meditation, student of Buddhism, want to live in a sane, uplifted, and healthy way, then I have a lot to say to you if you're ready to hear it. And one of the things I would say, first of all, besides it's complicated, is don't meddle based on your preconceptions, because everything you see is a preconception. You should ask questions about that if you don't see it. If you think that some things you think are true and some things you think are not true. That's why we end up meddling with people, and you actually can harm someone who needs to go through certain things. I'm not up here to, correct you or demand things of you, but there are certain things that in certain ways we can't see all of the hidden things that are behind anyone's apparent egocentrism or apparent pain or confusion. We can't see them. You can't see them. I'm not saying you can't look at it and have a group of ideas about that may or may not approximate what is going on. But I doubt it. And why I doubt it. You have a question?
Yeah, could I just? So when you say this, don't meddle, based on your preconceptions. I mean, is this? Do you think this would be always a rule, or could there be some things that are clearly just, such as my mother won't quit smoking and she's on oxygen? Nothing I not meddle there. Doesn't
it's not going to do you any good to meddle. You aren't going to change. The best thing you can do, since you're asking me, Tammy,
yes.
The very best thing you can do, I have no doubt about this, is sit next to her, look at her, and listen to her.
Oh.
That's all you have to do. It's not your job to fix her. Work on yourself. That's the very best thing you can do for mom. Work on yourself. Clarify your own mind. And that's the best thing that recommendation to Jay is clarify your own mind so that you can see more clearly what are you going to see more clearly? That you don't know what the causes and conditions. There's no way you can see the causes and conditions that create any given situation. It is extremely complicated. It's more complicated. It's so complicated that you can't find it. It's unfindable. But the discovery of that complication and the discovery of that unfindability, unfindableness, I've invent a bunch of words, the impossibility of seeing very deeply down into something and getting your head weight, all you're going to see is darkness. What does that darkness tell you? You don't know, you can't see it. So it tells you. It doesn't tell you that, oh, the darkness must mean, that must mean. Just look at the darkness, that will tell you. Take your eyes off from it. Don't ignore. When I say don't ignore, we have to first start by seeing the way in which we keep accepting, we keep going away from something. This is what this training about sitting down facing a wall. This is why Bodhidharma sat down and faced a wall for 9 years. No, we're not saying Bodhidharma didn't get up and take potty breaks. Obviously he did. So, but I know when I first heard that, I thought, wow, that is amazing. He sat there for 9 years because I was very literal about it. After all, I was very young. I was only 60. I think I was around 22, 23. So what I'm saying, what I'm pointing out here is I'm not trying to do away with anyone's concern or consideration about someone that's close to you, a friend, a relative, your mate, husband, wife, mother, dad, whatever. I'm not saying that, but the very best thing you can do based on the unfindability of this, the impossibility of discovering what that is in terms of information about it, is to just be there. There's in the Jukai or receiving precepts, the 16 precepts, the first 3 are referenced in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. I won't go into that today, but the next 3 are the 3 pure precepts, which means do good, don't do harm, and the third one is represented by this particular question, and that is the Bodhisattva vow, or be with all things. I vow to be with all things. We did that this morning when we put our robes on or put our rakusu on, or if you're not ordained or even lay ordained, you still do it. I mean, you may say this, put your hands in gasho, which is just a sign of respect. No one to worship. Don't misunderstand that gesture, that mudra. All you're doing is, you can't find the mind. So how do you shape the mind in terms of, how do you make the mind take a shape of respect? Well, you do it with the body. You put the body in a posture that is respectful. What does this mean? This is universal. You can go to a faraway place like Ireland. And if you go like this, they know what you mean. It goes without saying that this is also true on Alpha Centauri. Sorry for all the shenanigans. But it is true to look at things, look and see, how can you be with all things? You see the way in which you're not doing that. Because if you're actually doing it, there isn't anything to see. Because if you're with all things, you're not separate from them, and the discursive thought just dies right out. If you're worried, you're not there. If you're congratulating yourself, you're not there. If you're doing anything at all, it's without a reference point. It's the way we say it. So there's no support for the ego. The ego starves to death in this kind of lack of nourishment or self-centeredness. Quite often, and I'm not necessarily, Jay, accusing you of this, but quite often our concern when someone else is twisting around and we can see, it's like if they would turn to us and say, so what do you think about how does it look to you, what I'm going through here? You know, you're actually kind of getting permission. You could say, then you might say, if you have permission, you really know you're getting permission, they're really asking you. Then you could say, it looks like you're creating a lot of difficulty for yourself. And then stop. Don't say any more, dummy. Don't say any more. Have some respect for the person who's there. You have not lived their life. You may look down at your own shoes and see those are the shoes. You know, those are the shoes you're in. You're not in their shoes, as the old saying goes. You're not there. Stop it. If it sounds parental, well, I'm intending it to sound parental. You may need to have that kind of information. We can talk about the highfalutin teaching later. But right now, stop doing that. Just be with all things. It's very difficult to do that. One of the ways you know that you're on the path of being with all things is you start feeling the pain of the person that you're sitting with, which is what the Bodhisattva vow is about. What compassion is. Compassion means feeling with. So to pick on Tammy a little bit, and your mom is there. She's still smoking, right? And she's killing herself. Be with her. That's a painful load of karma to be dealing with. That's really painful to I had parents that were in the same situation. I had a mother who died of cancer. Smoked a lot. So we have to respect their situation and see, oh, that would be difficult. to be there. And so rather than chatter at them and saying, stop doing it, you're going to have to do that, and keep lecturing them. When people are lectured to or told things or ordered around, unless they're 8 years old, which is a little bit different. Not much though. You should ask questions about that one. Basically, children should be left alone too and just protected. Let them grow up. Stop meddling with them, trying to get them to train them. Just a bunch of, well, you know what I'm talking. Sanskrit words. Allow them to be genuine. Allow them, give them the feeling, give them some oxygen, allowing them to grow up and experience their karma, their life firsthand. Where was that? Who was I picking up?
Tammy.
Yes. So the idea is to stay with, to be with that. So it's so complicated. To come back to the basic theme that came up, the thing that came up when I read Jay's question is, Jay. And it's not that is an incredible question. We all deal with that. Of course, it's a good question. And Jay's way of thinking about that is he's covered kind of all of the areas of that. He's very good thinker. So he's able to say that in such a way that lays it out as showing how complicated it is for him. And I agree. I say, yes, it's not only that complicated. It's so complicated that it's like, what's the example? I've been using the glomeruli in the kidney. In the kidney, there are glomeruli. Those are the things that clean everything. Cleans your blood. Yeah, blood goes through there, and there's millions of them. Well, isn't there a million?
Million, yeah.
Who counted those? Come on. 1, 2, 3. Wait! Don't make me lose my place. 4, 5, 6. 7. I've counted to 1 million on these. Not the set, but I've counted to 1 million. I know what it's like to count to 1 million. It's a lot. It's a lot. And so you've counted to 1 million, you won't really realize how many it is. It's a lot. In fact, a mantra is kind of like counting glomeruli. So, and what is that training for? It's just to get you to see how directly and how difficult it is to really see the truth as relative truth. Relative truth is, it doesn't get any more relative than just 1 million. That's a relative statement. But the absolute is beyond that. It's so far beyond that that it's not separate from it. You have to realize it. Nobody's going to be able to come in and say, oh, here's enlightenment. Here, open your hands. Here it is. Or here's complete sanity. Not going to happen. It's not an occurrence. I'll tell you what is an occurrence is you're operating out of hope and fear and the 3 poisons of passion, aggression, and ignorance. You continually cover up your own sanity. We do. We do it in different ways. So when you see someone who is suffering, then you can kind of see, because we're intelligent beings, we can see the way that where they're kind of tricking themselves. And you want to say, Jim or Mary, man, this looks like you're just kind of making this up, and this looks like you're just torturing yourself. They probably are. But you need to keep your hands and your nose out of there. What you really should be nosy about is not somebody else's business, but what's happening deep in your heart, deep in this space that is so spacious if you look into it. Look at your dreams. Look at that area when the body slows down or holds still. Somewhat on the cushion is like a controlled kind of dreaming. It's an awake kind of dreaming. You're sitting, you're holding still, and you can see that you can actually dream and sit there. Just be there. Just be there. Complicated. Questions are good.
We have several people listening in today.
Good.
We have Sandru, Ashley Carter Youngblood, Liam Christina Rahala, and Maria Bardowska. And Sandru asks, is the meddling coming from some illusion of control?
I think so, Sandra. I think it's the feeling, because it's so obvious what's happening, and you may see very clearly the way somebody else is hammering themselves, but don't let that fool you, because the illusion of that, or the appearance of that, is only a part of the story, or part of the situation. It goes back down like roots of a tree. It goes back down to the ground where you can't see it, and it goes in the other direction. It's like Lewis Carroll said in Through the Looking Glass: memory that works in only in one direction is a very poor memory. What is he saying? You can remember the future. What he's introducing us to is how completely vast the mind is. It's almost like saying there is no past and future. When you're inside of a dream, there's no way to get a reference point there. Or there may be some way, but it's very difficult, very challenging if you happen to wake up inside your dreams. So yes, I think it's an illusion, and the way you could work with that is just to look at that illusion. And then the way you can work with that further is look at how much difficulty you have controlling your own thought. You can't, it's like saying, well, I'm just not going to feel that way anymore. Well, you don't really have that option. There's not that much freedom. There's a little bit of freedom, and it's relative, and we see it and we try to maximize it and then invest everything in that little bit of freedom we have. But you don't have freedom to suddenly sprout wings and fly, although they're working on it somewhere. Somebody's working on everything. At some point, there will be an anti-gravity machine, and it'll have all kinds of trouble with it. The only people who'll be able to get it to work right are what? The Japanese. We'll be buying anti-gravity machines from the Japanese until they figure out how to do that in Detroit. I guess they don't do that in Detroit anymore. They do it in Brazil. Brazil's doing everything. Or no, China. That's right. That's that other really big place. So looking at the illusion of control is very seductive. Like, I'm going to control this. Well, I'm just going to do this. Well, I'm not going to do that. Well, I'm going to try to do this. We constantly are berating ourselves for our lack of control, rather than as meditators, as students of the Buddha's Dharma, or students of one's own mind, seeing the way control actually works a little bit. That's why Buddhism is called the middle way, one of the reasons. You have a little bit of control. The sitar player that was talking to the Buddha asked the Buddha, according to the legend, how do I train my mind? And he said, how do you his teaching style was very interesting. How do you tune your sitar? I don't think they had guitars. And he said, not too tight, not too loose. I probably didn't say that. He probably said, well, it depends on what I'm going to play. Depends on if I can find my capo or not. So, but the Buddha's instruction was about, not tight, but not too tight, loose, but not too loose. Same thing with awareness practice, or trying to see in this lifetime that you're in, which is this is not your first one, more than likely. You actually have an opportunity. Look where you're at. You're in a room that is totally dedicated to what? Looking at your mind. Forget this guy. I mean, you don't have to. You can actually use this kind of representation to help you see this is how you do it. The hand mudra is beside the point. So look at the mind. Look at the mind. There's nothing here to believe. I don't believe Buddhism. I don't need to believe it, but I make use of it to help people understand and help myself understand something. It's like they say, don't reinvent the what? Don't reinvent the wheel. It's a spokeless wheel. But you you can actually look at the forms that are already presented here and use those as a support to moving yourself deeper into your own awareness, your own life, your own mind, and see it's not about correcting or changing. If we were all separate, then yes, and it would be about fixing and taking the conventional empirical model of something's broke, fix it. This is what modern medicine does in most cases, not all. Maggie.
If we give up the idea that we can control, will we experience a lot of fear and sadness?
Yes, you could. You would definitely open yourself up to really intense feelings. You could. A lot of the control thing is about hiding out from that, not being willing to be really genuine and experience the karma or the however you want to characterize it. Just the experiences that we're stuffing. Even modern psychology talks about ego states, where something has happened to you when you were 6 years old, and that is because there's because the mind wants to protect itself, wants to protect so we can continue to live. We just put that under a box or under a giant walnut shell. What problem? I don't have that problem. I'm living and just going on. Yet when something out here happens that resonates, like when that drum strikes and this window starts to rattle, it's very similar. It's the same frequency or the same resonance. Is that what they call it, Mr. Drummer? It's that kind of thing, which is very interesting. But when that happens, when something happens in your life where something is triggered and it goes down into that area and wakes that identity that is trapped up, then suddenly all that emotion or the feeling comes up. And because the consciousness is without boundaries, that comes up and floods your consciousness. And you think you're having a present day feeling. We all know what I'm talking about. And we react. We actually think that something here is causing this feeling, when actually it's just some simple thing happened. In common parlance, it's mountain out of a molehill. What do you do about something like that? Awareness is king. Awareness, awareness. Awareness is queen. Awareness, awareness. Train the awareness so the awareness gets so wide, so accommodating, so generous, so benevolent, so without a center, that your expansion is just going through the walls and the woodwork, and your mind just becomes very, very vast, very tiny at the same time. Just a little tiny grain of sand in the middle of, you pick your own desert. I like the Mojave myself. Lots of plants there, yes.
From Ashley Carter Youngblood.
I like
She would like to hear more about what you think about not meddling with children. She doesn't have a specific question, but.
well, it would depend on the child. You would first, having been a child and having been severely meddled with in one way and completely left on my own in the other way, I had an intense contrast. So my learning situation was highly contrast, very black, very white. The best thing my parents actually did for me is to leave me alone. And a lot of children don't like being abandoned by their parents. I loved it when my parents were gone, because then I got to get into trouble, do what I want, break things, jump up and down, run around, break windows, steal things. So, what's the question?
What is not meddling with children about?
Yeah. So, not what I'm saying when I say not meddling. I'm saying everyone's childhood is so varied, so different. It's not only how your parents treat you, but it's the very dynamic that you have with a given parent. Some parents have extremely good intentions to help 4-year-old Melvin. They have really good intentions, yet the chemistry between those two people is not good. And so what happens is the parent thinks, is backing it up with their thought process. Well, I'm doing the right thing after all. I'm doing, I'm following whichever book they happen to be reading. or whatever, or the training that they got from their own parents. And because they don't have respect for who is in front of them, they think they can just apply rules to them instead of actually looking deeply in and seeing. We all know, every one of us, even though those of us don't have children, we've all been children, and we know that everyone is so amazingly different. And you can't apply, and it's also true in this practice, you can't just put everybody in the same box. So with children, the first thing I would say is to have a lot of respect for them. You don't necessarily have to let them get away with anything. You know, children obey their parents, as it says in the 9th century. Ministers serve their lords. Children obey their parents. We're not taking away relative truth. When I had difficulty with my children, I did the best I could. I didn't have a very good model, so I had a difficult time trying to understand what was actually happening, what I should or shouldn't do. But I would say the very best thing a parent can do is try to train your mind as a parent, so you're very clear about your own neurosis. You're very clear about when you project onto somebody. You don't have to stop projecting. You probably can't. Sorry to tell you that. But you can be very aware that you do that. And when you do it, you'll just see it. It'll just be like something moving through space onto somebody else, and you'll see it, and it'll start to drop away. If you accept it, or if you validate it, it stays. If you fight with it, it stays. It just shifts a little bit. It'll keep looking for a crack where you allow it to be there, so that you don't have to see who that person really is. Am I making myself clear? I don't see any heads nodding out maybe. So the idea is, what am I saying? I'm saying be very tentative, very careful when you're talking to a really young person, even if it is your own offspring. Be very careful about it. Be considerate. Give them the benefit of the doubt about things, but don't necessarily. I'm not saying, like A.S. Neal back in the 60s wrote books on letting children just run free and do anything they want. And I can't remember the name of his books. I was really into reading all that stuff, along with Maria Montessori and all those, which have a lot of valuable things in them. So specifically, Ashley, I would say the best way to work with children is to train yourself. Make friends with yourself, so you don't push your idea of right and wrong onto someone who is so young. I can talk to you personally in an interview, but there's things I would say about that to you, Ashley, because of the work that you're in, being a counselor. So there were some things I could say personally with your situation that are more difficult to say as a general. It has to do with working with individual people and what comes up, especially young people. Question?
Question from Christina.
Christina Rahal.
Traverse City. What is that resistance that doesn't like how things are? Would you please give suggestions as to how to work with it when I stubbornly, angrily go on strike because of it?
The best approach that I know of, and I'm not saying there aren't other ones, but the best approach I think is just to sit as much as you can, to actually spend as much time as you can on the cushion, and so that when the emotional tsunami or the strike comes along, it runs into a lot of awareness. It doesn't run into someone who has been shuffling around and trying to just ignore and well, I'm just going to bake bread. I'm just going to try to. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to. Nothing wrong with any of those things. But look at your intention. Look at your motivation behind anything you do. Look at your intention. I'm going to talk about some of that tonight when we talk about patience. I'm not saying that the conventional way of talking about patience isn't valuable, but the way I'm going to talk about it is not particularly conventional. There's really nothing to wait for. That's what I'm saying. Yes.
Is it just self-centeredness that sees what looks like contrast?
Say more.
So when contrast is experienced through commentary or evaluating things.
Contrast is not so bad. It's when we think that part of it's good and part of it's bad. They just see the contrast, like there's a contrast between blue and red. But if the light intensity of those two colors is very similar, very hard to see the contrast. It's hard to see the line between them. You know what I mean by light intensity? How much light is actually coming onto that is one way of saying it. Also how much reflection is coming out of it. Like yellow has a lot of light intensity. Red does not. The hue of red is, you follow me? Is closer to black. It doesn't. You put red letters on a black background, you can't read them from any distance. So those same things apply in different ways to what we're looking at in terms of contrast. There's nothing. The contrast is actually the path quality of it. So first, beginning of the path looks like this is right, that's wrong. I shouldn't. They should, they shouldn't. They should stop doing that. How do I communicate? We take on other people's stuff and think that we know how to fix that or how to change it because we're only seeing so far into it. That we're not them. We don't know what it's like to have been dealing with this kind of a issue for centuries. And so what we do is we back out of the right and wrong part and begin to see the contrast there, which we're not sure who's right, who's wrong. So the contrast works for a while, and then at some point there really isn't any contrast. I don't mean you can't see black and white things. It even becomes more simple to see just ordinary things are black and white. But still, the stone woman gets up dancing. So things that seem like two different things are not dissimilar. It's kind of like magic. Further question if you have one there. I sense there's one there. I haven't made myself that clear. Haven't I?
Well, what is it that sees contrast?
So initially, the awareness, in provisional teachings, it's your awareness that sees the differences between things. But the beginning of seeing that is to see a right thing and a wrong thing. But as we look and we don't add to the wrongness or congratulate the rightness of things, we start to see that we're seeing those conceptually, and we begin to see that they're very similar. That they have their differences. There's a contrast there, but they get their meaning from each other. You can't see black without white. You can't see black without black. You can't see light without darkness. There needs to be some darkness, like shadows. Those are dark. That's how we see forms. We just take this for granted. Like, oh, sure. Who doesn't know that? But if you begin to see it as it actually is without your laminations, it is a stunning appearance that just everyday things start to take on a different look. Sometimes the Tibetan way of talking about that is emptiness and luminosity, or confusion and awakening arise together, co-emergence. More.
So is that seeing the contrast but then having nothing to say?
It gets worse. Before it gets better. You have nothing to say, and then you see that, well, maybe you should say something. Michael.
Red and blue. Is it possibly that it starts out that I like red, I don't like blue? And then as you go along, all you see is red and blue.
A little bit like that. That isn't exactly where I was going with the example, but that's another way of looking at those two things. Say that. Yeah, we have our preferences start to, the backup for the preference starts to vanish. Then we see that our choices there apparent choices are kind of arbitrary. Shoka,
One of the pure precepts is do no harm.
yes,
What is harm?
meddling. Meddling based on your preconceptions. Like if I look at you and and you get, let's just pick on you personally, because I know you love that. Let's say you get triggered by something, get angry about something, and I can see you're upset. You know, and I'm not saying you do that all the time. You do quite well, actually. But let's say you get triggered by something, or actually this applies to anyone. But you're a close student of mine, so I see you a lot, and I've known you for a while. And so let's say you get triggered by something, and I see that, and you're actually maybe not too happy with me about something that you think is going on. And do no harm is to have respect for you and know that you need to go through that yourself. I don't need to come in and say, what are you upset about? What are you so upset about? Are you upset with me? What's going on? You know, what's bothering you? Can't you see that this is just, you're just making this up? You shouldn't be getting mad. Nothing has happened. You ever seen me do that? I don't, because, and when I say because, it doesn't make me a saint. It just means I'm aware of what's going on. It just means that I know better to step into somebody else's karma when they're wrestling with their own causes and conditions and their own triggers and their own bundle of difficulty that's trapped in different places, which we've talked about extensively. So I stay out. Now, this doesn't mean that I might not at some point come in and say, you need to look closer at that. Or I might say, well, you know what I'm saying. I think I've made myself clear. So just don't meddle. Even though we think we see that somebody is wrong or off, or just like Tammy's mom, you know, we can see it. It's obvious. You know, she needs to stop smoking. She needs to. They need to. He needs to. We do so much of that, and it's good to hold still and practice just seeing what is coming and going, coming and going. Practice on your own little tiny thoughts. Going across the screen of your mind. They don't make that sound, actually.
So where does acknowledgement come in? Or does it come
What? Acknowledgement.
in? Acknowledgement.
For what?
If you have a relationship with somebody and you see that they are struggling, and you can see that at what point,
Yes.
where does compassion come in? What does that look like? And, you know, not meddling, but seeing,
Mhm.
and then knowing that you're seeing
Okay, that's
is
good.
an important exchange.
Don't do anything else. Give the person you're talking about, give them credit for seeing. You can actually stop something and prevent somebody, meddle with somebody by interfering with their awareness, which needs to sink down in that on its own. You're there to help them. Be very, very careful about permission. Get their permission. If you do anything without somebody's permission, it's just like you're trying to see down into the water. And if you want to see it, if your goal or your intention is to understand and be more clear, then don't muddy the water. In other words, don't reach into it unless you're invited. You know, Abby, the other thing is, it's so, here again, coming back to the title that I gave the title, so complicated. But some of that complication might clarify itself if you put, 99% or 78% of your energy into just seeing it. Just see, he is doing this, they're moving this, they're pushing down on this. You can see that they're unclear about this and they're reactive about that. And if they turn to you and say, where am I screwing up? Can you see I'm in trouble? I'm asking you for some help. Then I would definitely check in and make sure. I would say, do you really want my help? You want to hear what I have to say about this? And then if they say yes, then I'd say there's about a 50-50 chance that you can help. But even then, people so much, it's complicated because they'll look at you and want to help you by wanting to be someone that that you are able to help because they know that you are a person who feels really good when you help people. It's complicated.
Or you could project yourself onto them.
Yes, and you could be trying to fix yourself by fixing somebody else instead of minding your own business and going back, sitting down on the cushion, deal with it, deal with it. Or you could say, deal with it. That would, you don't have to use a really gruff, heavy voice. But what I'm saying is sit down and find out who you are before you take that who you think you are towards somebody else as the main repair person for somebody's psychological, spiritual, or material path, for that matter. Simple words go slow, very tentative. Shoka.
How do you relate to seeing meddling with people without doubling up on your negativity?
So, how do you relate to seeing
Meddling.
your metal without doubling up on it? Don't worry about it. If you see that you're doubling up, that's all. That's awareness is all you have to do. You don't have to correct yourself. You don't have to stop from doubling up on it. But if you see that you're doing that, then you've done it. Then don't double up on that. In other words, actually find a place where, okay, that's enough. You wouldn't even say that's enough. If you say that's enough, that's fishy. Or if you say, there I go again, that's fishy. If you make any comment, if you go from the actual meddling or what's happening into a concept about it, I shouldn't meddle. You've actually left what you've left it, and you'll do it again. Passion, aggression, ignorance. Quite often people, I just was hearing on the radio about someone who was married and their had children, and the dad beat up on, according to the story, beat up on the mom. And she wanted her kids to have a dad, so she just stayed in the cycle, and just for 10 years. Did anyone hear that story? NPR. And just, she's caught. But the man who was there was, she would say, well, he would be so sorry, and he would apologize, and he would, beg her not to leave. And then he, of course, that's what? Passion, aggression, ignorance. There's aggression. He can't handle his own, so he projects it on her and then beats her up. I'm not saying she's not triggering something, maybe, but their karma is all linked together. So he beats her up, and then he sees what he's done, and then he goes into passion. Oh, I'm so sorry. So sorry. Please forgive me. I'll never do it again. Makes promises because he didn't want to be left alone. And then as soon as she kind of accepts that, then he goes back into ignorance, which is the third most difficult of the three poisons, and ignores the whole thing and goes along until the next thing because he's not willing to explore it. His only job is to be able to beat her up and get excused. This is why I talked about apologies and forgiveness. I don't want to talk about it recently. The whole idea of blaming it's just misunderstood. People want to find out who the culprit is, but it's just misunderstood. So this tragedy of that situation is just keeps rotating year after year after year, and there's no real help. I'm not saying there isn't some people that could help, but it's a difficult one when there's no awareness practice going on. There's just thinking.
From Sandro, he said, asked, does the mind become vast, or do we see the vastness that is there?
But yeah, the mind doesn't become anything. Yeah, the mind doesn't doesn't become something else. The mind is just this, but we drag all kinds of stuff into it, lifetime after lifetime. So yes, the vastness is already the case. It's completely vast, profound and vast. It's called prajna, or wisdom. Prajna paramita, the wisdom that has crossed over. What? It's crossed over into, you could say emptiness, but that's not empty. Empty is like, that's empty. See, I can't. See that coffee in there? No, see, when you tip something forward, the coffee doesn't come up. The coffee late because of gravity. That's right. Empty. It's not a relative emptiness. It is an emptiness of your thoughts and ideas and structures about it. The simple way is it's empty of what you think it is. But if you see that vastness, it's not an actual experience. Experiences come and go. Vastness doesn't do anything. Vastness is wisdom. Use a relative word to describe something that's indescribable. Warren.
How do you communicate with somebody who only thinks in black and white without harming them?
What is your relationship to them? I mean, are you
There's
married to them or
No, I mean,
girlfriend, boyfriend?
you have
mother?
a child together.
Huh?
How do you raise like a child with somebody, your significant other, you know, your wife,
Yeah.
husband, who only thinks in black and white without, you know, interfering with the upbringing of the child and the other person?
It's complicated. And it looks like it would depend on how strong you are. Pretty much, it would not be about her or the child. It'd be about you. You would have to be able to hold your seat, not just physically, but figuratively. You have to be able to hold your seat and be okay with any kind of negative emotions that arose. Don't put anything in gear. It's like being in a really gigantic bulldozer. It's in neutral. Leave it there. Leave it there. Don't do anything with your anger, your frustration, or anything. Be willing to die for it. If it's your child, be willing to die before you fight with her or with that child about anything. It has to be. Otherwise, your karma just keeps tumbling on. That's the only way you can work with karma, is to be willing to actually be genuine, be who you are. And I sense that what she does triggers your situation, and then you try to help her, correct her, point out her black and whiteness and how she should maybe not do that because that's not appropriate. And this child is to be born in April, am I correct? So sit a lot. What am I going to say? Sit a lot. Train the mind so that you can not go to war with yourself. Because before you can not go to war with somebody else, you first this has to stop going to war. This deep discontent. Because if somebody comes along that is in any way disagrees or presents a problem, then one of these is going to go out in the form of words or harsh words, and then that you don't have permission to hit people. I'm not saying you would hit anybody, but I'm saying you don't have permission to actually be, even though it's something that he or she or they did, even if you're correct, that doesn't give you. A lot of times people think, well, they did something. That's all the permission I need. Well, that's a misunderstanding. That works on in the mundane world of cause and effect. But on a spiritual path where you're really interested in what fundamental sanity, not just relative sanity. Everybody's got relative sanity. If everything's going good, you're okay. If things go haywire, you go crazy. But someone who has realized on the spiritual path does not particularly go crazy, no matter what happens, regardless of how they appear. They may appear to go crazy when everything is going perfectly, and appear to be totally serene when everything is coming apart at the seams, and they have a slight smile on their face. Yes, sir.
So there's the child, the mother, and yourself.
Yeah.
And the one thing you said about the child is to protect the child.
Did I say that? I'm not saying I didn't, but I'm just saying, is that a quote?
Yeah. So how do you know when it's necessary to protect the child?
You'll know. You'll know if you do as little as possible. All you have to do is be with the child. Watch their body language. You don't have to analyze the body language, but if you're there and you see someone moving this way or that way, or you hear the tone of their voice, listen to the tone of the voice. listen to, stay in your senses. And don't add to anything that arises. If one of your senses is telling you something tastes sour, don't add on to that with commentary. I'm using that because that's something we immediately want to, we have to taste something, we immediately have comments about it. So stay in the senses, notice how the child and the parent, if that's what the situation you're talking about, notice what their interaction is. Then function in such a way as to just be present. Your presence will have way more influence on the entire situation than any word you could ever say.
So is that the same answer for Tammy then too?
Yes. Same thing. All you have to do is love your mom. You don't have to do anything else. End of story. Go in there and be with her, appreciate her eyes, appreciate her smile. If she doesn't have one, then tell her a couple jokes. There you go. I mean, really, just it's very simple. It's heartbreakingly simple, the way people give the people they love so much trouble, when the people that they love so much are in situations that are not as simple as just stop smoking or don't do this or do that. It's difficult. So that's really not easy. That being said, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying, because we're just drawn into, we got to do something for them. All we have to do is be there. Yes.
So if you have these, nonverbal cues and you're aware of like what's happening, how?
I didn't say anything about nonverbal cues.
Oh, the body language.
Yeah. It's like they're speaking, it's like their body language, but the way I mean body language is body language that looks like, you speak Russian?
No.
Okay, it looks like Russian. In other words, treat body language like it's a language you don't understand. And that way you'll stay in your senses. If you treat it like something like, well, if they put their hand like this must mean they're thinking about something. If they put their hand like this must mean this. If they cross their legs, cross their arms, this must mean they're not open. So don't do it. Don't do anything with it. Just observe.
So saying, like, so if you're aware in a situation, like your senses are there, so it's better to say nothing and just be there.
Yeah. Bingo. Yeah. Just be there.
How do the other people know that you actually?
They don't. It doesn't matter. They're so busy in their heads, probably. They're so into their head about what they're doing that only occasionally will they look at you, and then they'll go back into their thoughts. And then every now and then, if you're watching, if you're not doing anything, you'll notice that occasionally there's a flash where they see you, and then they're back into their thought pattern. They're still looking at you, but you can see by the look on their face, by their body language, you can see that they're not there. So there's no point in talking to somebody who is not there. I see this all the time in the interview room. I see it here. I'm seeing it now. Not right now with you. You're listening to me. If you've looked at this for a long period of time, you begin to really see what's out there. First, you have to look at this, and that's what I'm telling you. Turn around, go face a wall, do it the rest of your life. Don't give up. There's only, as far as we know, there's only this lifetime. Actually, there's lots of lifetimes. There's all kinds of them, but you happen to be here in this lifetime. You're very lucky to be here, not because I'm so brilliant, but because I have one message to you. Find out who you are. Simple. I don't have to be even a smart guy. Yes.
The thoughts and emotions that go through our mind,
Yes.
like that, will they continue to cause us problems if we're not aware of them?
Yeah, if we're not aware. I have all kinds of negative emotions and things that go through, and I just watch them. I don't believe them, nor do I disbelieve them. That's the difficulty about believing. That whole idea if you disbelieve something, you think it's not true, then that's just as powerful as thinking it's true. Don't take any position on it. That takes a while.
Are some of these thoughts and emotions very, very subtle and hard to see?
Extremely. Even more subtle than what you just said. You know how subtle you said that was? If that was like a 10, to really see how many are, I'd take it up to 1 million. It's that subtle. It's so subtle you can't find the end of it. The tributaries flow in the darkness. It doesn't mean 4 or 5 tributaries. It means that where you came from is so vast you never can find it. But you can discover who you are now in this very second, this microsecond. You can see it. And it's called awakening. And it's not an experience. And it's available to every human being. It might be available to chipmunks. I don't know. I don't know how to teach chipmunks. But it might be. They're living beings. They have eyes, nose. It might be available to dandelions. What?
They just talk funny.
Chipmunks? Yes.
From Christina, she has a couple of questions.
Yes.
Is there a backlash effect from attempts to stay positive? Seems like I don't want to see the negative and block it out until it breaks into awareness. Is positive mindset a form of ignorance?
I understand the question, Christina, but I wouldn't interfere with that, a positive mindset. I think that's very individual, and sometimes a person might need to do that. But to try to find out what ignorance is and stay away from it doesn't work too well. I mean, to find out what it is conceptually, I'm going to stay away from that positive mindset, because that's ignorance. Any other questions? We're kind of at the end of our sojourn, but if there's another question from especially someone who has an answer. Mado?
Yeah. Is there a difference between awareness and consciousness?
Yes. There's different ways, they're just words, but my way of using awareness, and this is just a way of saying, I'm aware of this motion, I'm aware of this, but my consciousness is all over the place. It's including everybody that's in here. It's including the floor. It's including everything that's happening in my body. And to some extent, it's including what's happening in other people's bodies a little bit. Not separate. Not separate. And not, you can't go the other way and say together. Can't do anything with it. But what is missed is how close, how very intimate everything is. Very intimate. I'm reaching here. So awareness is like an area that you're looking at something, awareness. And that awareness might be flooded with all kinds of thoughts about the texture of this and who made that and the skill that they had and what their name is, and then putting it back down. Whereas all the time I'm doing that, I'm still conscious of everything else that's going on. It's just like it's just off stage, but it's there. You won't miss it. And what happens with someone who is realized, in other words, when I say realize, they realize they're not separate. That's simple. They just realize what the Buddha taught. Dependent origination. If you realize that, then your awareness, everything gets much, it's always been there, but suddenly you really see how big this whole thing is. When you're no longer this little congealed me, and my stuff, my problems, my feelings, my emotions, my this, my that. Oh shit, what am I gonna do now? End of my rope. Don't misunderstand, I'm not mocking or making fun of anyone that's having extremely painful ice pick like emotions or feelings. I'm not mocking that, but I'm saying the person who is going through that kind of terrible passage, near as I can tell from my practice, needs to bring as much awareness to that as possible. And how do we do that? The Buddha taught. Sit down and be genuine and actually stop going to war with yourself. Stop trying to get rid of what is arising. Trying to get rid of what is arising is an interior kind of warfare. And it just spreads out and it gets worse. So I have to start somewhere. That's a good spot. So awareness, consciousness, that's just a way of talking about it. You can change them around and say awareness is the really big, and then consciousness is just what you're focused on. I don't know, they're concepts. You have a further question about that?
No, I just,
Is that helpful?
I thought that consciousness was attached to objects or some kind of objective situation.
Consciousness is
And
not.
awareness was panoramic. That's.
Okay, let's do
that
what
was
you
my
say.
preconception.
Then we can have what you said. That's also a response to your own question. But you asked me the question.
Yeah.
So I'm saying to you, my understanding is, and I can take it further now that you've made it more clear, consciousness is not separate from anything. Awareness is a temporary separation so you can see it. Awareness is always a temporary separation. Fundamentally, nothing is separate. And consciousness is everywhere. There isn't anything that isn't consciousness. And it's without a self. Awareness has a temporary point of view of I'm here, eyeballs are here, ears here. Yep, it's wood. I'm being silly, but it's that kind of a immediate thing that is just there. When you really see what this is, then that becomes highly empowered without a self. The awareness that is without a self is like a laser. It goes right to the heart of everything it sees, but it doesn't meddle. Don't correct anybody. If I were to start correcting people, I'd be around here. I'm a Zen monk. I can hit anybody I want, right? I mean, you come in here, you give me permission to hit you. Of course not. That being said, people come to you for help. We try to meet them where they're at and with their permission, help them in the way that we have permission. It's actually very subtle and very soft and very gentle. There's some Zen meditation people who are very mean or feel like that's a good way to help people.
2 more questions.
Okay.
One's from Jay.
Jay.
If someone thinks that meddling equates to caring, how do we not meddle while showing that we care?
Don't worry about it. He knows what I'm talking about. Stay in your senses. You'll like that one. Stay in the sense of smell. Why do I look there? You can't see me. You'll get a. Should I say something or not?
Sure.
No, I'm not going to say. Jay, she just wants me to look at the screen of the computer, and that's why it's humorous.
And then from Anna Maria.
Anna Maria.
When the person you love and loves you pulls away or pushes you away because you represent something they don't want to look at, much less see, how to proceed without impressing your superiority / judgment of them.
So, I don't know. Anna Maria, isn't she an FBI agent? Working for, what's that?
Maybe you're not supposed to talk.
Oh, I'm not supposed to talk about FBI agents. Okay, I'll shut up. When you got to your question, when you got to the word because, there's a big presumption there. Because it's so complicated right there. And I was with you until you said because. And as soon as you say because, then I'm looking at the same person that you think you're looking at. I'm looking at your preconceptions of who you are and who they are. Don't do anything. Leave them alone. Stay away from them unless you're invited. And if you're not invited, then come and hang with them. But don't correct or point out their apparent foibles or misunderstandings, even though they seem so this is so accurate and so obvious they're doing this. That's where we go awry. We take current situation that may be true or not, and we want to control things, so we actually jump on board that the way that looks, and don't realize that everything is constantly in flux, and there is not a self behind anything. There's nothing without a self, nothing that has a self. If you see this, and everywhere you look, everything belongs to you. It all looks like everything looks like your property. Somebody should paint my walls. Are we going to dedicate the merit?
At the back of your chant books is the dedication of merit. We'd also like to remind you of the donation boxes that are in the hallway and at the end of the Zendo here. Please help us as much as you can, and online. You can go to our website and participate in donating.
May the merit penetrate into all places so that we in every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Gyo san chi Shizon musa mokosa the 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita,